Hi. So just recently, I finally got around to reading Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings. Um, I, of course, had seen the movies many times, and I'd read The Hobbit. I first read The Hobbit like when I was 10 or 12 or something like that. I was given a very nice edition as a gift at that time, and I read it several times because it's a very pleasant book to read and very easy read, actually. But somehow I never got around to reading Lord of the Rings until just um, this past, you know, week or so. Um, but I'm glad I finally did because they're really good. Um, Plenty of people out there are like, yeah, I know. A lot of Middle Earth fans out there, um, and I'm starting to understand that because these are fantastic books. Do I call it a book or books? Because I mean, technically, it's one book in three parts or six parts. Um, I don't know whether to go with the singular or the plural. Anyway, um, but the first thing I really want to say about it is that it's beautifully written. Tolkien, words were his thing, language was his thing, and he knew how to use it. Um, he knew how to use words, and not only knew how to use words, just how to put them together, but you kind of need to have the ideas in your head, the ideals, the principles, the the aspirations, the loves and things in your head that you want to express with those words. And he had that evidently, um, because he uses those words to express a lot of beauty, both in the natural world, describing the beauty of the natural world, and the beauty of the characters. Um, these characters are there's so much honor in these books. These really honorable characters, really dignified. Really, there's a lot to admire in these characters. And I'd kind of forgotten that books could be this beautiful. There's yeah. I'm used to narration. I'm used to plot in books and movies, but to experience that done in such a beautiful and such a rich way is not common anymore. Um, and um, and it was a a very delightful surprise to find um, just how rich and beautiful these books are. Because I mean, beauty is everything. Beauty really is to me the most important thing. Um, so I love the way in which this story is told. Um, and of course, the whole time I'm reading it, I'm comparing it to the movies because the movies were my first my first way of experiencing this story. And whenever you have a book being adapted into a movie, it's normal to say the book is better, which is normally true. But in this case, I'm not going to say that. Actually reading the book actually gave me a greater appreciation of the movies. Um, it was very interesting to see all the changes they made. Um, but in most cases, I was like, I can see why they made that change. That it still works. It still works well. Um, and when because whenever you're adapting a book into a movie changes almost always have to be made because literature is its own medium with its own strengths, and cinema is its own medium with its own strengths. And when you're turning one into the other, um, you have to change things um, to accommodate for the unique needs of cinema and to make it the strongest movie possible. And they did that. Um, they did it quite well. And it's really amazing because while there was a lot of planning involved in making the films, as there has to be, especially for movies this size, when you're watching the making of, it's also amazing how much making it up as you go along happened. Um, there was a quite a mixture of the two, um, but they still knew what they were aiming for. They still um, had the right spirit of the thing, and they knew and the talent um, to make it real. So I think the books are exactly what they need to be, and the movies are pretty much almost exactly what they need to be for each one. There's only a couple, 2, 3 points where I was like, okay, it's better in the book. Um, the climb up to Shelob's lair and all that. I liked it how it was portrayed in the book better. Um, the very beginning of the book is a lot slower than the movie. It takes a lot longer for things to happen than in the movie because it takes years actually before things start happening. Um, and in movies, pacing is kind of important. You need to keep things going. Um, and Frodo in the movies is younger than, but that's all good. The thing about the beginning of in the book, in the movie, the way Pippin and Merry join up with Frodo and Sam is like just haphazardly. They just run into him in the cornfield, and then all of a sudden they're a part of the journey, which it has long been kind of comical to me. Like, oh, okay, now they're just a part of the crew now. Okay, well, whereas in the book they actually know what's going on and they choose to join in, which that's better, that's instead of just falling in with it. And just disappearing from the Shire. What happened to Merry and Pippin? I don't know. They were in a cornfield and then they were just gone. But so that was done better in the book. And then, but on the other hand, the way it was done in the book is a part of the slower start to the journey. Which they were trying to speed up in the movie. So, and then there's a scene near the end of the book in Return of the King, which isn't in the movie at all. There's like one very brief scene in the extended edition which kind of hints at it, but isn't really. And that's a dialogue between Faramir and Eowyn that I really liked, and it was really interesting to see the other changes that were made, which I was okay with. I mean, and some of which you're already gonna, if you've watched the making of the films, you're already familiar with some of them. If you haven't, even if you haven't read the book, like for instance, Aragorn is. In the movie is hesitant about claiming his title as king. He's concerned about the weakness in his blood, the weakness of his ancestors, right? Whereas in the book, he's not concerned about that at all. He's definitely going to become king someday. It's just a matter of doing everything in the proper order. I mean, he's going to become king if Middle Earth doesn't become completely drenched in darkness and Sauron wins. But if everything works out, he will be becoming king, and he's not concerned about the weakness of his ancestors. And the romance between Aragorn and Arwen is non-existent in the book. It just doesn't exist. There's a couple places, if I remember correctly, where it's kind of hinted that she's kind of special to him, but that's it. And then all of a sudden he becomes king, and then all of a sudden he's married to her. I mean, it's not all of a sudden he becomes king. It's actually a nice ceremony, but then all of a sudden he just marries her, and she has a couple lines, and that's it. Her role is very much expanded in the movie, and the romance is, you know, very, very much expanded. But it works beautifully. It works wonderfully in the film. Um, and the way Aragorn is handled in the book is also works wonderfully. Um, um, then, of course, there's Faramir, who himself, who, again, if you watch the making of, you know this, that um, in the book, he has absolutely no temptation to take the ring for himself or to take it to Gondor. He's pretty much perfect in the book. And they try to give him more of a character arc, more of a struggle in the movie, which it works. It's kind of, I think it works a bit better in the book. I mean, it's a bit more straightforward in the book. But they both pretty much work. But it's, that's another change they made. And there's some others, but those are the main ones that I remember. And of course, the Scourging of the Shire, I've heard people complain about that being left out of the film, but I don't see how that could have fit in. I mean, the way they structured the movie, you couldn't have had the Scourging of the Shire in there. I mean, people are already complaining. For one thing, there's the fate of Saruman involved in that. Depending on whether you're watching the theatrical versions or the extended edition. But also, people are already complaining about Return of the King having too many endings. A complaint I never understood, by the way. I was like, wait a minute, you're spending at least 9 hours of screen time with these characters. You're following their journey and getting invested in these characters for 9 hours, and now you just want the story to end? No, we gotta wrap their stories up. I thought it had the perfect amount of endings. Excuse me. And while the Scourging of the Shire is a wonderful chapter, that would have been, that just wouldn't have worked in the film. But it's definitely a good chapter worth checking out. The whole book, the whole book or books are definitely worth the book is very much worth reading. The movies are very much worth watching. So I can definitely recommend the book. As far as the target audience, I mean, a few months ago, I think I did a video recommending the Oz books, Wizard of Oz, and all that. And while they're delightful for, any person, the target audience is really the very young, the 5, 6, 7, 8. And then Lord of the Rings is kind of right after that. There's absolutely nothing in the books there's nothing in the least inappropriate for children. I mean, it's not PG-13. It's not PG. It really is a universal work. It's just a matter of your reading level and where your reading level is at. You may want to have a dictionary on hand. There may be a few words in there that you might not be familiar with, or the way they're used you might not be familiar with. So for anyone 9, 10, 11, and beyond, I definitely recommend it. I would also recommend reading The Hobbit first. I don't know if it's essential, but it's definitely a good introduction to Middle-earth. It takes place, before Lord of the Rings, so it just kind of makes sense to read it before Lord of the Rings, since it is chronologically first and was written first. So, yeah, check out, if you haven't read them, read The Hobbit and then read Lord of the Rings and then read them again, because I'm going to read them again. I mean, when I got to the end of Return of the King, I was like, I want to go back and start this all over again. It's that good. It's that kind of book where as soon as you're done with it, you want to just jump right back in at the beginning and experience it all over again. That is the mark of a well-written book, I tell you what. To experience that world, to experience those characters, to experience those ideas all over again. So, yeah, anyway, I guess, like all my videos, this is totally unplanned, totally off the top of my head. So, I don't have anything specific more to say, except I'm glad I finally read these books. I will be reading them again. I recommend them for anyone who hasn't read them. I especially, it's for anyone, but the idea of a child reading these books is something that makes me happy. That idea, because it'll really enrich the child's world and really enrich their mind. But it'll do the same for grown-ups too. Anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.